So recently I've been in the media for speaking out about a cult. The Esther Foundation. The Esther Foundation. Last time I was here I was scared to say that, but it's in the news now, so fuck it. And I'm not scared anymore. Thank you. Thank you. I was in a cult for almost 5 years. Pretty much sucked. So for those of you not feeling familiar with my cultic days, I'll just give you like a brief overview. So the cult was a women's rehab, and it was run by an extreme Pentecostal church. To give you an example, some of the things that would happen is some of the therapy that would happen is that people would be treated by having demons driven out of them that were causing that problem. Demons, spirits of addiction, spirits of homosexuality, obviously, a Jezebel Spirit. That's a evil and rebellious woman, if you didn't know that. That would be me right now. If anyone wants to come do some deliverance, up you come. I see a hand up the back. No, you're right. It won't work because I have to want it to go. Another thing that happened was in order to heal physical problems, you had to apply force to the injured part to show that you had faith in God. So, for instance, if you sprained your ankle, you had to hop on it until you were healed. Or if you tore all the ligaments in your knee, you had to jump off the stage at the church. I spoke to someone the other day who had to do that, and she hasn't been able to play sports since for over 10 years. Healed in Jesus' name. All of us were terrified of our cult leader, Patricia. We were terrified of her publicly shaming us. We were terrified of her pointing us out for prayer. We were terrified of the punishment she would inflict if you didn't do as she said. Patricia had to be obeyed, or you had to fear the consequences. You might be wondering at this point why I would go to a place like this. In short, I needed help. I had a lot of issues and I had a lot of mental health problems, and at that time I was a Pentecostal Christian myself, and the doctrine I had said that I could only get help from another Christian, specifically another Pentecostal. That doctrine also told me that inherently I was worthless and bad and evil, and the only way I could be redeemed was to have faith in Jesus and then to spend the rest of my life serving him. Kind of like an abusive relationship that you have from as long as you can remember, and then you can never leave it because you need it to maintain your sanity and so that you don't end up in hell. So in that state, I went to the Esther Foundation seeking help and finding psychological abuse. One of my favourite cult stories, though, is actually kind of a more light-hearted one. So one day we were in group. Group was like group therapy, which was basically where Patricia would just talk for hours about whatever she felt like. And we were discussing someone who was associated with the program had just bought their child a rabbit. Not just any rabbit, a big rabbit, like this. Was it a hare? Do we have hares in Australia? I don't know. Was it a jackrabbit? We were having this important conversation. All of a sudden, Patricia spoke up. No. Everyone went quiet. She spoke again. No, it's not a jackrabbit. It's a natural rabbit. It's a natural rabbit. All at once, everyone in the room started nodding. Natural rabbit. Yes, it's a natural rabbit. I cast a glance at my one friend on the other side of the room. We always shared this kind of unspoken knowing about how fucking weird this all was. We took the risk of giving each other one strange look and then looked down at the floor. That was as far as our bad behaviour went in those days. Natural rabbit. Not everyone, though, came under Patricia's cone of fear. At one point, I met this young guy. He was 17 years old at that time. His name was Luke. And he was like a street racer and into dirt bike racing and into fighting for fun. And I was like, yes, someone I can save for Jesus. This is someone I can help. And men couldn't come to Esther House, but they could come to our church because we ran our own church, of course. And so I invited him. And I think that sometimes people who are kind of extreme are like interested in different kinds of extremism for a while. So he came to our church and it was like a mission for me. At one point, I even paid for the two of us to go to Sydney to attend the Hillsong conference. Topical. We were there every day in the auditorium, raising our hands with the joyous throng. And sometimes, even then, I wondered. But I did it. It was what I was born and raised to do. After less than a year involved with the Esther Foundation, Luke surprisingly got sick of cult life. His parting words as he left were, "Nah, yous are all a bunch of dumb cunts. I'm fucking out of here." Inglorious as these words were, we dismissed Luke's rejection of our belief system as ignorant. He was into hedonism and risk-taking, things that were wrong. We understood better. We chose the one true God. So 13 years ago, I left the Esther Foundation. I walked away. At the time, I never wanted to think about it. I never wanted to talk about it again. But as the years went on, I started to engage in different paradigms of thought. I studied art therapy. I learned more about the history of Australia's history with First Nations people. I learned things that challenged the paradigm of thought that I had grown up with, that had been indelibly branded into my psyche. See, I was raised to be a martyr for Jesus, to literally be tortured and die for his name, if need be, and I was raised that that would happen in my lifetime. Letting go of a belief system like that is not so easy. You have to unpick every stitch that has been sewn into you from birth. And as each stitch was unpicked painfully, I started to realise that I could no longer stay silent about the Esther Foundation. I realised that abuse was happening and I knew about it. If I knew about it and I did nothing, I was allowing it to continue. And if I allowed it to continue, I was complicit. The natural rabbit wasn't funny anymore. It was an abomination. Things started to snowball from there. I wrote up a 20-page document detailing what happened at the foundation. I sent it to the board. I started to advocate for our voice and our freedom. I spoke to David Hardacre at Crikey. I spoke to other media. I started to speak out. And as I did, more and more fear fell away. At the same time, more and more fear of the church fell away. I realised this is what was holding me back. When you've been raised to die for Jesus, speaking out in any way that will bring dishonour to his church is completely incomprehensible. In order to speak out about the Esther Foundation, I had to lose my fear of the Christian church. I had to lose my fear of going to hell. I had to lose my fear of God. No more natural rabbit. I was speaking to someone about this the other day. I realised that the breaking point for me was where I finally got the courage to speak out. I finally gave up on thinking that the Esther Foundation was going to do anything about the abuses that happened. And I got the courage to speak out and send my document to various church leaders. I got over my fear of the church. I sent it to them. I was so full of victory. I was like, they're going to listen to us. They're going to vindicate us of the pain we felt. But in return, I mostly got silence. Where I didn't get silence, I got an unwillingness to do anything that would bring dishonour to the church. I still have some kind of belief in the divine. A lot of the Christians I know are beautiful, genuine people. But the institution of the Christian church, from its early history, has been set up to enforce empire. It's a tool of colonialism, oppression, and war. It's an abusive relationship you can never get out of until you can. That silence in the face of our pain was the moment I left the Christian church. And at that point, the words of an old friend made the utmost sense to me. Nah. Yous are a bunch of dumb cunts. I'm fucking out of here.